Well, ladies and gentlemen, there's really not a lot to talk about apart from the most important story that's currently happening in South Africa, and that's the trade tariffs due to come in on the 1st of August. So at the time of recording, really not a lot of time left to negotiate this so-called deal to stave off these 30–40% tariffs, whichever are actually applied. Now, before we get on to the main video of today, can I yet again remind you, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon. Only 30% of you that actually watch these videos are actually subscribed. In any case, let's actually get on to the news. So this deal, as you'll know, we've got a tariffs due to come in from Donald Trump, and they're attempting to arrange a deal with the US in order to stave that off. Now, according to the news, as of yesterday, the South Africa's Director General for International Relations says that there was no guarantees of securing a US trade deal by the 1st of August deadline. And he said, I mean, this is what's happening now. They're all making excuses. And he said that the reason for this is that there are certain objections from the US that are unresolved. Apparently, these are their main issues. They are the trade barriers, and South Africa doesn't really know how to get over them. So the first is Black Economic Empowerment, BEE requirements, which the US views as a non-trade barrier, and the ANC has categorized as being pressure on the ANC's sovereignty as a country. But you see, the ANC are retarded, and we all know they're retarded, and the brother of Jesse Duarte, the troll of the ANC, the communist troll of the ANC, is the one actually responsible for negotiating these. And it's very curious that he's now trying to make these excuses, saying that it's all about the US exerting its dominance on South Africa. That's not actually what happened. You see, the problem is if the US sets up a branch in South Africa, and the branch is ultimately subjected to the main rules of the head office, let's say it's in the US, but the branch itself is doing things that they're not allowed to do in the US, the head office in the US could theoretically be legally responsible for the branch that's doing those actions in South Africa. And a key component of that is, well, BE, racial policies, which in the US is illegal. So that's why they're saying you can't do it in South Africa. This makes perfectly logical sense when you're not a retard. Now, according to the Director General of the International Relations team, it's amazing how all of the rhetoric here just started to denigrate. Because as the so-called negotiations tended to shift from a we nearly have a deal to the US isn't budging over BE, the actual blame game tended to intensify. And so what we've now seen is that apparently the US is insistent on domestic reforms, and he's calling these non-trade demands and threats. You see, the problem now is that he escalated this to say that it was really actually more about South Africa's vocal stance on Israel, accusing it of genocide and being an apartheid state. He then said that it was about the diplomatic shifts regarding Taiwan and proposals to host Iranian functions as being complications of the relationship. And the fact that there's no meaningful reforms of the Expropriation Act and revising BE policies were all parts of the US objection. Now, he insisted that the government is continuing to push the right arguments and claimed that there was ongoing engagements, although he said that this had stalled and that South Africa was now seeking substantive feedback from the US. Go take a lot of this with a pinch of salt, because the very next news article came out that South Africa had offered nearly 60 billion rand in private investments as part of the proposed deal with the US. And according, again, the US has not provided any substantial feedback on the proposals. Now, as you can imagine, we have this 30% trade tariff on the potential horizon with an additional 10% for being a BRICS member. And noticeably, you can imagine that the lack of deal in sight is causing people, well, heart palpitations. Now, what are they actually going to do about it? Well, from my personal perspective, I can't actually see this deal being done in time. And it's important to understand that already you're starting to see all the ANC trolls starting to ramp up the excuses. It's going to be that it's Western imperialism, and it's going to be this, and it's going to be, pushes on the demands of the sovereignty of the country. It's going to be the usual ANC bull rubbish. We know they're going to do it. And you can see they're already setting up the groundwork in order to be able to start doing forms of, let's call it a redirecting fault. Now, in other places, you may call this, I don't know, disinformation or propaganda in order to hide your own faults. But inevitably, we can look forward to the ANC's bull rubbish that comes out of this. Now, talking of bull rubbish, you may be asking yourself a question as to where Jonas. Well, according to Jonas, he has warned that spreading political misinformation is counterproductive and damaging to the country's political discourse. And he suggested that we need to put in place safeguards to protect the domestic trust and warned against deliberate misrepresentation campaigns against the country. Now, this comes obviously after the fact that he claims that parties such as Emma Powell that went to the US and damaged our good name meant that the negotiations had become more difficult. And to Jonas, I would say, you're such an idiot. The reason you, Mr. Jonas, have not done very well in the US and have not been able to break ground and actually advance a trade deal is because you went on record and verbally assaulted a sitting president. And it's amazing that time and again, the ANC does these stupid things, but it's everybody else's fault. And instead, we have cries of misinformation, disinformation. It's everybody else's fault. It's never these people's fault, except it is your fault. If you had shut your mouth, you may have had a better response. So moving then on to the final two news articles. And this is the first news article that the DA says that following Cyril Ramaphosa's suggestion that he didn't really give a damn about the DA's threat to vote against the budgets if he didn't fire the higher education minister, the DA has insisted, specifically Helen Zille, to be honest, that the threat to vote against the national budget if this individual had not been removed was a serious threat. Now, as you'll know, Cyril Ramaphosa said that he did fire it, but it actually had nothing to do with the DA pressure or the budget negotiations. And according to the DA, they considered her misconduct linked to irregularities over Overseas board appointments as being a key corruption issue, and they called for accountability across the ANC. But you see, here's the problem. ANC doesn't care about accountability, Helen. And you can make all these threats all you want. You could say, oh, it was a real serious threat to vote against the budget. But you didn't vote against the budget. And there's all these red lines. Everybody's seeing these red lines, and everybody sees you traverse your red lines, and everybody sees life just carrying on. And when I say everybody, I mean the public, but not just the public, the ANC itself. And so we're in the realm of the boy who cried wolf. The boy who's cried wolf has cried wolf too many times now, and so nobody takes it seriously. And that's actually ultimately where the ANC finds itself. Now, the final news story is really around the Tswane Municipality, and specifically the Iranian complex, because the Iranian embassy has approached the Tswane Municipality to use an abandoned city hall as an Iranian cultural center. That's a museum, a library, some restaurants. And the DA in Tswane has strongly opposed the proposal, advising that a rejection of this should be forthcoming due to the potential harm to South Africa's trade and diplomatic ties with the US, particularly in the automotive sector, and obviously as part of the broader negotiations as a whole. Now, the DA has called for the matter to be debated in council before any decision is taken. But you see, again, the ANC doesn't care about the US or the damage that they are going to do to the economy. They care about their own pet ideological projects. And it's interesting that whilst they're going through these tariff negotiations right now, the retards cannot just shut up, sit in their lane, and not cause waves. Instead, they feel the need to be there negotiating whilst causing massive international risks with the very party that you're attempting to negotiate with. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to anybody with a brain cell. But the ANC are retarded. They've been retarded for a very long time. All we are seeing is the offshoots of that retardation. And everybody's looking at it going, oh, they can't be that retarded, can they? The answer is yes, they can. In any case, that's just my views. Do let me know what you think in the comment section below. Until next time, bye.